We've been on for a minute.
Yeah.
But I'll slate
Oh,
it
have we?
if we're ready.
Damn
Yeah.
it. Again. We're going to have to erase that herpes part.
I think I might do this whole episode in Christopher Walken's voice. So
Wow.
if anybody has got an issue with the host, it's a good show.
He's talented.
It just goes to show.
And now she catches more fish than I do, so I've grown to regret that.
That does say. I was like, man, I really hope I'm not overselling this. Oh well.
Probably, I was very, very fat. I was at least 5 pounds heavier then than I was now. And, they say...
You carried it all in your face. Whether we're elk hunting or mule deer hunting or whitetail hunting, I mean, that's the epicenter, the climax of the year, the hunting season for us, the hunting year.
Yeah, prime
After
time.
that, yeah.
Can he say climax?
I did. I think I can say that. Do we have to mute that?
There's nothing worse than breaking your boots back out again in the spring for shed hunting or whatever it is, and they just smell like the local bowling alleys, rented them out for 3 months straight.
Yeah. And then I also learned over the course of the weekend that a thigh master can be an incredible upper body workout.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Who's bringing us in?
We're on. We're live in living color. Back from elk season. Ready to talk about it. Yeah.
It's been a good month.
Welcome back.
I missed you guys.
Ditto.
I didn't miss you as much. I thought I would, but I didn't, actually.
Yeah. Me too. And when I say I missed you guys, that was... I guess I didn't really miss you either.
No takebacks.
Okay, bye. Yeah, it goes fast every year, doesn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
It was fun. I had fun. Learned a
Yeah.
lot.
Yes.
So, Crave Crew is back. Oregon elk season is over. Was over about 10 days ago.
Yeah.
Finished up. We went 1 for 3, so still above the average.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Johnny
For over the
Johnny on the spot here, picked us up, brought home the goods. What'd that score about? 130.
It scored.
That's a good
There
blacktail.
was probably twice as much boned out meat,
Yeah.
in weight than there were inches, for sure. But
It's a good eater.
It's kind of like when
Yeah.
when you're like, well, what does she look like? You're like, well, she's got a great personality. Your elk had a great personality.
I feel very fortunate. It was not an easy. No season, is easy, I guess.
Your brother's one season was pretty easy.
Yeah, I guess. It was, but just feel fortunate and lucky, and did a few things right and a lot of things wrong, but that time it just worked out. So, just happy I could toe the line, and get us above the average, harvest rate for archery over the counter elk.
Way to keep our street cred intact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, that's great. So this episode, we're just gonna kind of recap everything that kind of went on with the season. What gear worked, what didn't. Some things that we learned, both good and anything you learn is good. But just some tactics and some tips that we can pass along that we learned, and it was a little bit different season for a few different reasons. So Nate and I hunted together in Eastern Oregon, and then John hunted the coast.
Yep.
Over the counter.
Yep.
You weren't on the coast, but you were near the coast.
I think a lot of people say, where are you hunting at? It's just kind of a generalization.
Sure.
People if you're hunting, Roosevelt's, I think people just throw out the coast.
Yep.
We were probably 15, 20 miles inland. So for sure, They were true coastal brush bulls and elk.
Yeah.
Almost couldn't say plural bulls this year with how many we actually saw, but yep. And you guys are a ways. That was quite a bit of a drive for you guys to go where you went.
Yeah, it's a pretty good pull.
Yeah.
Yeah. The state itself, it doesn't seem like you can get anywhere quickly, just given the vast size of it. So,
Well, we had to take the long way a couple of trips over too due to wildfires. Had one of our major east-west freeways closed down for several weeks. So
Yeah.
that was rough.
let's start there. That's becoming. I didn't grow up in the West, so like it was never really a big. I guess I never really paid too much attention to it, but definitely finding out that wildfires can play a huge part in your elk season. I mean, completely derail everything that you've kind of worked for and planned for all summer, spring and summer, and then these fires start up for one reason or another, and can make you completely change your game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we were in a situation where the area we were in was not in fire danger, but I mean, there was fires all around it, and like to Nate's point, we had to drive a different way to get there. But just the air quality. I mean, we were there a couple times through the summer scouting a little bit, and really the whole state. But gosh, you'd go out there and it was so hazy. I mean, mountain ranges you could see on any given day you couldn't, just because there was so much smoke in the air. So it's kind of a bummer, really.
Yeah.
It made it tough. There was some big fires in Northern California, and we had a north wind probably for 2 weeks, and then there were some local fires that popped up. But there's a day where we woke up and it was, I bet you we had a quarter-mile visibility.
Yeah.
Which makes glassing tough, and it just kind of sucks hunting and that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was bad even here at home in the valley. I mean, the news was basically saying straight up, don't go outside if you don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is hunters, you just ignore.
Of all the seasons for me to
Right. I'm saying it's got to be pretty bad if the news is telling you to stay indoors.
Yeah, and I forgot my inhaler too, so asthma, was
I packed mine. I didn't need it. But
yeah.
You're blaming it on asthma?
I've had asthma for years. It's exercise induced asthma, to be specific, and the doctors say that once my heart rate gets up around that 60 mark,
You want to scale it back?
Yeah, just go ahead and sit down, grab yourself a beverage, kick the feet up, elevate.
yeah.
So
Relax. Bring
yeah.
yourself back
That's
down.
that craft beer induced
Yeah.
asthma. Yeah. But so
You must be allergic to IPAs.
yeah,
That's your problem.
yeah, right. Let's talk. We just wanted to, for everybody out there, kind of first of all, just go over the best and worst things of the season. What happened. I mean, even in your worst season where it's rough. I mean, there's always those bright spots. It's kind of like golfing. You can have a terrible round, but you end up hitting that on the 18th hole. You hit that drive, and you're like, man, this was a lot of fun. I'm going to come back and do it again, even though the previous 17 holes stunk. So, I mean, you can have seasons like that where, you don't see much, you don't hear much, but usually there's that one day where you have a lot of encounters, or have one really cool encounter, or see something that you have never seen before, and it makes it all worth it. So, Nate, you wanna start? Tell us what. I mean, there's probably a few things.
Yeah. I think we'll get into this a little bit later in the episode, but I'll start with the worst, I guess. So since it's such a long drive, we made multi-day trips over to our area. And on the second trip over, I had a malfunction with my sleeping pad. And I pretty much slept directly on the ground for 5 days. it was not
sucks.
not cool. I also had a sleeping bag that was a little too light, so I had a big Agnes bag that has a sleeve that their brand of sleeping pad slides right into.
Uh-huh.
The idea being is the pad's always underneath you. If it's slid into a pocket in the sleeping bag, you can't
Right.
slide off the pad. But that means less insulation on the bottom side of the bag because that's where your pad goes. But if that pad goes flat on you, you're kind of shit out of luck.
Oh, gotcha.
So it was pretty rough. I was directly on the ground, and it wasn't super cold yet. But the fact I had zero insulation underneath me,
Yeah.
it was pretty uncomfortably cold every night.
Yeah.
And sleeping on hard packed ground.
Man, that's why I always pack two. I bring a spare, which I didn't figure you wanted it, so I didn't offer it.
I did. To be honest,
And I
did
like to have two of them under me at all times.
Yeah.
So.
I did have one in the truck, but we were packed in quite a ways, long enough where I decided to just tough it out rather than walk all the way back to the truck in a base camp and swap it out. But I survived.
So to paint the picture, Nate and I packed in a few miles, and we planned on being in there most trips for 3 or 4 days, kind of depending on, what our schedule allowed. But minimum is about 3 days. So we each had single man tents and sleeping pads and sleeping bags and the jet boils and the whole 9 yards. But I mean, as it's tough and it's frustrating because Nate kept waking me up, and I'd wake up every few hours to him inflating his air mattress.
That was your worst.
That was part of my worst. I'm like, come on, man.
I was blowing elk out of camp every time I'd wake up to do that too.
But it's tough. I felt bad for him. Like, man,
I can tell.
that's rough.
Yeah.
But
It was
try
like
to
a
be quiet.
slow leak too. It was just like torturously slow, I guess.
The one
It's
where
one of
you
those
wake
things
up
where
and-
it feels fine, and long enough where you get right to sleep, and then 45 minutes later you're on the ground.
Ugh. Just long enough where you can actually fall asleep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That sounds bad.
Yeah. Needless to say, I swapped that out. My whole sleep system got changed on the last trip over, which is a good thing it did, because we had about 30-degree colder temperatures and
Lucky your guys'
hail and snow on the last trip over. So
Lucky your guys' sleeping bags zip together.
Yeah.
I'm glad
there
you
was a lot
tested
of
that
a lot
before
of body
before you
warmth.
took off.
It's always
Yeah.
available. So, yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
You got a best? No.
I mean, there's a lot of good things about the trip. I mean, we didn't kill, but we hunted hard. And we were in elk most every day. It was just tough conditions for various reasons. I felt good about our overall effort level. I guess that was my best takeaway, because the first weekend was fairly smooth, but the second 2 trips over had pretty major shit show type things go wrong. In the second trip over, I had kind of the tie for the worst too, is I had been running a pair of boots all summer long, put in a ton of miles on them, and they're super comfortable. I was happy with them, but I hadn't run them in the wet at all. And about 3 days in on our last trip over, it started raining and hailing with purpose, and found out pretty quick those nice comfy boots didn't hold water out worth a damn.
They're advertised waterproof.
Yes,
so,
they were.
Yeah.
And I treated them as well with
Mm.
some of the silicone spray and stuff. And yeah, they were pretty well soaked through
Yeah.
in the first day of serious rain. And that was the one time we decided to just walk out to the truck. And that was pretty brutal. But I mean, we didn't let that stuff damper our spirits or anything, or the lack of shot opportunities. I mean, we stuck with it, kept at it hard, kept getting into elk. It just, it's one of those years where it was rough. So,
For sure. And I've hunted with you for a few years now, and I'd venture to say that, 4 or 5 years ago, given these things happen, I'd say you probably would have, your attitude might have been a little bit different. But you were super prepared. I mean, you had spare everything, and the gear you did have was it was all good stuff for the most part, except for the boots and the holy air pad. But
Yeah.
you were prepared to the point where it wasn't going to stop you from hunting.
Right.
So yeah, no, that's cool. Just to piggyback on that, yeah, I'd say probably the worst for me was just the weather in general. The last time was pretty rough. I mean, I like hunting in inclement weather sometimes. It's just I think you kind of get the measure of a man to be able to go out there and you buy all this crap to like venture out in the worst of elements, and a lot of times you never get to use it. So it was kind of cool to be out there in snow and hail and sleet and rain and everything held up well, but it was garbage, man. It was so windy and it was just really tough. We spoke a few times and it was like we ended up hunting elk like late season blacktail. We were just still hunting these elk because they were all hunkered down. I mean, you were trying to find these elk kind of bedded up in the timber patches because they were themselves were trying to get out of the elements. So it was tough. That stunk and then my water filter. So the first weekend, it was hot. I mean, it was probably pushing 90s, and Nate and I had split up, and we went into I went into one area, and I had got everything set up, and the only downside to where I was hunting was that I didn't have any access to water. Like real immediately, I had to go down in the bottom of a drainage, which was a pretty significant elevation drop and very rapidly. So I knew I was going to have to do that every day. And it was just a walk you just don't want to make. It sucks. So anyway, the very first day, after blowing a bunch of elk out the day before season started in this area, I hunted down to the water and, a tip for anybody, something I learned, and I'm glad I did it, but you're at the water source. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I want to make sure I'm as hydrated as I can be before I fill up my water bladder again. So I drank most of my water, and luckily I did say to myself, leave a little bit of water in here just in case your water filter doesn't work, and I had no reason to think that it wouldn't. It had always worked before. And sure enough, I got out the water filter and I put it in the water and I started to pump and I'm pumping and nothing happens. I'm not getting anything going. So I'm not sure. I spent like 20 minutes trying to figure out what was going on with it, but it was busted. It didn't work. So I had to climb out of that hole with like 8 ounces of water. And the bad thing is like I had to not only like go back to base camp, but I had to pack up base camp at this point and walk all the way back to Spike Camp and then walk all the way back to the quad and then drive that over to where Nate was at and then walk in. So, I mean, it shot my whole first day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
the
probably
crazy thing is the second to last day on that first
day.
trip.
Yeah.
So it was hot.
It was hot.
Yeah. And I had the same pump system, and mine failed on that same trip over. Thankfully, on the kind of the last evening, so we were able to fill up our 3-liter bags one more time, and that got us through it the next day, hunting in the morning, then packing up camp and walking out. But I mean, we had 2 of the same pumps, and they both failed within 2 days of each other.
Yeah.
So definitely want to make sure you got, your iodine tablets or your treatment deals or some kind of backup for water treatment too.
And I didn't have a backup, and usually I always historically carried water tablets and something to get you through. But in this case, I mean, it really shot my whole first day and added a bunch of extra miles because I would suggest, checking that stuff out before you leave. Your water filter, if you can, just run it a little bit before you leave. Make sure that works because if you don't have water, I mean, you can get by with a lot of other things that don't work, but that was one I really couldn't. Anything short of like, filling up my water bladder and then hauling it back and then 4 cups at a time, boiling it in my jet boil, that would have been like the only way I could have like stayed in there, which I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with the fire bans, I mean, you couldn't start a fire and boil water or anything like that. So it was it was rough. That was no good. But probably the best thing, saw a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, I saw some nice mule deer bucks. Didn't have a tag for that particular area for them, so couldn't make a move on them. I think probably my best was I don't think I've never spent as much time in a spike camp before. I mean, we were in there for like 6 days, I think.
Yeah, it was 7 nights, 8 days.
Yeah.
On the last trip.
So, I don't know. It was just cool to be able to be in there and, just to live and not really need anything, other than what you carried in on your back for that long. I've done a lot of 3, 4, 5 day stints, but never anything that long. So,
especially in foul weather too.
Yeah, it was really bad.
That was
really
the
bad.
stretch where it was nasty.
Yeah. The one thing that we did do that Nate and I, it's probably the best decision we made that during the last week anyway, was when we knew the weather was going to get bad according to the forecast before we left. So as it started to get bad, one thing we realized we didn't have was we didn't have a good shelter canopy system set up. We had tents, but if anybody that's been out there in a tent situation for more than a couple days knows that if you have inclement weather, it sucks because it's hard to sit in your tent for any long duration. If you want to make your food, if you want to just come back in the middle of the day and relax a little bit.
Or even just change your clothes and dry clothes or whatever. You got to try and crawl into your tent and all your wet stuff and change it in there. So
we went back to the truck and we ended up hauling back in a couple, like 12 by 14 tarps and got those up over our tents. And that was a lifesaver. That was big. That was key.
Yeah. The first major hailstorm literally hit us as we were tying out the last guy line on the tarp too.
Yeah. So
it was like perfect timing, I guess.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny?
Man. You know what they say, any day hunting's better than
sure
day any bad day hunting's better than day in the office. I did. There's definitely some times where, despite my joking, I did miss being over there with you guys. But I would say that my worst would be I had a horrible time with the grouse this year. like the grouse, the Terminator grouse over there.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I got so frustrated because I had hit 2 grouse earlier in the weekend. This was probably, I think, the second weekend. And they took my judo like a champ, and they got up and they flipped me the feather and they took off. And so Todd and I were walking out a cat road. We were just gonna go hunt this patch of timber. And we came around the corner and there's 2 big ruffed grouse. And I thought, enough messing around. I'm gonna smoke this thing with my broadhead. It's at like 80 yards. And it's kind of in some grass. 8 yards.
Yeah.
Barely within my range.
Top pin.
Third pin.
Yeah. Third pin.
I got really small pin gaps. But so I draw back. I shoot. I smoke this grouse. My arrow goes like 8 feet past it and is laying there, and feathers everywhere. And it just immediately flattens out, wings, dead.
Yeah.
I was like, finally, right on. I'm on the board, and it stands up, looks at me, and it was a pretty steep hill on the left-hand side. Another grouse had flushed right after I shot. It then flushed, locked its wings, and sailed for like 300 yards down this canyon. And it's big timber. And I just watched that grouse go out of my life, and that was probably the lowest I'd felt in a long time. Because, there's no... without a dog, I mean, there's no chance of
Right.
Yeah.
finding it. And I went and looked at my arrow, and I had
Guts,
I
liver.
no,
lung.
I had shot forward. I breasted it, but still for a grouse
Come on. Yeah.
to take
Yeah.
an arrow, a broadhead,
Any broadhead.
just like gosh dang, they're tough.
They're
So I was
ninjas too, as far as ducking arrows and stuff too.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed on that. We just had the hardest time finding. I'm not a trophy hunter by any means, but you like to, if you can, try to get a mature bull or mature animal, and we could not find any. Up until the last weekend, we finally found. The branch bulls started finally hooking up with the cows. Saw a lot of elk, but they were all in their summer patterns, cows, calves, and spikes, all season long up until that last weekend. So that was also, kind of, I mean, it was cool seeing elk, but I guess you get a little frustrated, but then you realize, hey, this is cool, we're seeing elk, so
Yeah.
it's better than not seeing elk. But worst would definitely, all-time worst, this is probably my worst for a long time as far as being in the woods. I have a poop story, and I
Yeah.
don't know if we should, hey.
I think you go with it.
You might want to, turn it off now or tune back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. There's more than one, I think.
Man.
True, there is.
So, I think the correct term is shart.
Yeah.
But
I'm familiar with the term.
a shart is different when you have access to new clothes and a shower,
Right.
and actual toilet paper. And I had the first mountain house of the season, which I know better.
Memorable. Always memorable.
Stroganoff, beef stroganoff,
Ooh.
delicious,
Solid
delicious.
choice.
The following morning, the guy I was hunting with was cussing me because I was just he couldn't be in the same rig with me. We weren't going to see any elk. Doesn't matter if the wind's right. He was very frustrated with me, and I start, you start getting those pains, and we all know, it's your body telling you, hey, it's go time. You better, anyhow,
Right.
long story short, I pushed it, no pun intended, and it happened, and very unexpected, and it was bad. It was bad, but there was enough. We weren't by any water, but there was enough morning dew on the plants and stuff to try to clean it up. It was bad, guys. I'm sorry. That being said,
No dead down wind wipes with you, or baby wipes?
later on,
You had no
sure.
back at the truck.
No TP or anything? You said you didn't have TP.
I didn't actually have TP. I had these shop towels.
Four-way stretch.
They're great. They're great for this is gross. They're great for just solid's great, but liquid their absorption factor is nil.
I see.
So
It's like
that
trying
really
to clean
wasn't-
up a spilled oil pan.
Yeah. which was funny is we watched two guys walk down into this timber,
Ooh.
and I know that they encountered that on that elk trail because it was
Your murder scenes?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And but anyhow, that was pretty bad. But that was, man, yeah. Best was brand new area. I'd never been in there. Just being able to go in there and get lucky and take out 2 elk. My father-in-law shot a cow the last day. Phenomenal hunter. He's killed a bunch of elk. That was actually his first cow, but we were super stoked to be able to put some meat in the freezer for sure.
Well, I think that's worth noting. So, your father-in-law, we all know him, great elk hunter. this is amazing. So I would say probably most of his life he's been in an area where you could shoot cows, right? He's hunted areas where you could shoot cows, and he's this was like his 35th, 36th elk,
35th.
right? 35th elk.
35th elk.
And his 35th out of 35 elk, he's killed one cow.
And all archery kills too.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
He's okay.
Yeah, he's halfway to where I'm at, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, but yeah, it's always fun to, to hunt.
Well,
with
you
them.
say you're
So,
lucky, but that's not. I mean, you guys, both you and Todd,
Yeah,
very accomplished hunters. So, it's more than just that.
yeah. Well, there's always a bit of luck involved
Sure.
too, because I mean, you're always dealing with the elements, and you just never know. So this is the first really bull that we had seen with cows was the one I shot, and it's across the canyon, probably a mile and a half. Had some cows with him. We watched him for about a half an hour. 3:00 in the afternoon, raining, and he was raking a tree in this older unit, and we knew how to get underneath him. There's an old road system that went underneath him, and you couldn't access him above. It was the first time we've actually saw elk in this particular area.
So, just for people that are listening, and most people have not hunted Western Oregon. That's a very small piece of the demographic, right?
Okay,
Unless
yeah.
you live in Western Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you live in Oregon, period, the chances of you hunting Western Oregon is still pretty slim. So when you say, just to kind of just paint a little bit better picture as far as when you say, we've seen them in a unit, an older unit.
Yeah.
Like Nate and I know what you're talking about, but I think a lot of people, and even for me when I moved out here, it was a whole new ball game. Like I had to learn. It's completely different than when most people think about elk hunting. You're like, okay, well, it's aspen trees, it's big meadows, it's big,
Mm-hmm.
big mountain ranges with that I can see through open timber. This is not like that.
Yeah, so the Roosevelt elk, that's what we were going after. They live in a lot of different types of coastal habitat, but when I say units, it's it's a place where it's essentially has been logged in the past, and right around that first or second year after a piece of land has been logged, so a lot of that new growth starts coming back up, and those elk love it, and they'll hit those units or clear cuts for the next 4 or 5 years, sometimes more, until the trees are grown up enough where there's not a whole lot of feed, there's not enough light that gets down to the to the ground, so the browse isn't there.
Similar to burn areas in more arid.
Same kind of
regions.
idea. Yeah, those fresh burns. A lot of animals kind of gravitate towards those. But so yeah, this area we were hunting had a lot of those units, different age class of units. But more importantly, there's big timber, which is bedding for the elk, and they love those. When you get two of those together, patch of good sized timber, 30, 40 years plus. And then a unit, typically that can be an elk magnet. So we spotted them over there, and we got over there, got the wind right, and snuck into about 60 yards, maybe 70 yards from where I thought they were at. And bugled just real timid like, and twice, and raked a tree, and he got up to investigate and made a decent shot. So yeah. What's nice about that is typically you're not too far away from a road. So where my pack out was only 300 yards, where we've killed elk, where you guys hunted at, or where you were at, that's 4 or 5 miles plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
It's a trek.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but.
So what piece of gear on your trip or your season was helpful, the most helpful, or something that you look back and like, man, that was I wouldn't want to do that without it.
Todd has a piece of optics. It's a Zeiss spotting scope, Carl Zeiss. He became our buddy Carl. It's a large piece of glass. I can't even tell you exactly what the model number is. All I know is the best thing I've ever looked through. It's very clear, and it's a big spotting scope, and he has a nice tripod. I mean, the whole thing together probably weighs dang near 15 pounds.
Wow.
But we got really proficient in setting it up quick. I think that was kind of my perception with spotting scopes, is that they're really cumbersome and they take forever to set up. But I mean, literally, he would see, or I would spot an elk off in the distance, anywhere from, I mean, we were picking elk out, like literally on the GPS as the crow flies, like 3 miles away.
Dang.
I mean, you couldn't
with your
you
binos
couldn't-
first, and then with the
No,
spotting
when
scope,
they were that
or
far
you're
away,
glassing-
when they were that far away, I just happened to throw the spotting scope up, and then I was like, oh, there's an elk right there. Tough to put horns on something that distance, but yeah, it was insane, and it was just a really instrumental piece of equipment, and there was other vehicles there, right? There was other people that were glassing, and they'd come up, or we'd pull up behind a group of people, and they were just there, and I'm convinced that because we had that spotting scope, we were able to see stuff that nobody else could, or at least nobody else that had a spotting scope could, and it was a game changer. I mean, that bull that I shot, I mean, within 10 seconds of putting the spotting scope on him, like, yep, that's a bull. So you could not see horns with your binoculars.
Sure.
So that I would definitely say our buddy Carl. Yeah.
CZ.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's cool, because I think that's a lot of, there's those pieces out there where, people, it's an investment, right?
Yeah.
And
it wasn't my investment. It was
which is
Todd's
nice.
investment.
Yeah.
So it worked out even better.
I'm signed up. I'm third on the waiting list to use it. So, but I mean, that's good to hear, because I think a lot of people out there wonder, like, if it's worth the investment. And I would say, to add on that, it probably depends on what kind of hunting you're doing. You guys were in a situation where you had access to a lot of roads, and units. When they talk about these logged units, it's kind of like a checkerboard. If you've ever flown over the West Coast, particularly Oregon, Washington, you'll see these, and it's like a big checkerboard where they've logged out a unit. So you can imagine being down and looking across all of these, and yeah, I mean, if you have the ability to reach out and kind of pick it apart, because they're big units, and a lot of times those elk know how to hide even in plain sight. So if you're able to have a piece of equipment like that, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to go to, planning a trip to Colorado, and you're hunting kind of the country that the three of us have hunted out there, you're even in Eastern Oregon where we hunted. I just sometimes it's not as beneficial. It's just
not that one anyway.
Right.
I mean, there's smaller,
Right.
spotting scopes and lighter tripods that that are more ideal for that. But yeah, but you're exactly right. For that application was phenomenal. I mean, I think we were successful because of really, I really truly think that's why we were successful, is because we had that spotting scope.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't you guys.
Yeah, it couldn't be. Yeah, that and just the sheer amount of exploring that we would do during the middle of the day. Like those first 2 weekends, it seemed like you'd see people in the mornings and you'd see people in the evenings. And I think people would get out and they'd do their 1 or 2 hunts, and then they'd go back to camp. But we covered some miles, both walking and driving, during the middle of the day, to find out like how to get to that area.
Sure.
Okay, we saw elk in there. How do you get there in case that bull does show up? And by the end of the season, I mean, we knew that area very, very well, and we were able to close the distance pretty quick. So,
Did you have a GPS that you were using with road systems?
Yep.
Or you had no cell service, right? So
Very. In a couple spots, you did have cell service. Yep. But GPS, I had my tracks on my GPS, which is just something that you would click on that tells you, where you have been. Not all the roads were on the GPS, so with your tracks, you could tell, okay, there was a road in here,
right.
which made it nice. But yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Anything you hauled in or packed in that you were like, I probably could leave this at home next time? You've been through this a few times. So you've maybe culled everything out that you need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got your 2-pound bag of Skittles that you always take everywhere you go.
So yeah. Yeah. It was kind of a bummer. It really didn't cool off enough to where I could start hauling chocolates till that last weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I would say I pretty much have it leaned out to where there's really nothing in my pack that isn't useful. But
Except baby wipes, apparently.
except baby wipes,
Maybe some
yeah.
sort of
Except baby wipes for sure.
butt wash. Yeah. Okay. Nader,
Shop towel.
gear,
Yeah.
pressure washer. So if I got a Spectrum, John's on one end. I'd say you're probably on the other end as far as gear that you haul around in your pack. I did slip a few peaks every time, like you'd pull out your, gallon size
Did you take the pots and pans this
Ziploc
year?
bag out. And
No.
No.
No
Now
No pots and pans?
just for the record, you've slimmed down your pack a lot. So,
Yeah.
but you still got quite a bit of gear in there.
Yeah. This is true. One of the trips I took,
Which I'm glad you do, because those first couple weeks, there was a few things that I had forgotten, and I definitely relied on you to have spares, second or thirds of, like, hey, Nate, you got this, and I knew you had it.
yeah,
Had to have.
extra socks, wool socks.
He's like the magician
Yeah.
with the
It's like,
Yeah.
it just keeps coming out of the sleeve.
That was all those years in Boy Scouts. Had to be prepared for everything.
yeah.
Plus, I got a good pack finally, and so
Yeah.
I can add 7 to 10 more pounds and
Oh,
not
easy.
really feel
Yeah,
the
it's like
difference.
you're not even carrying it. So,
Yeah,
well, you got like 6 hankies you carry with you. Just
yeah, I do.
cycling those through.
I do have a fair few of those.
But what was this year was like your eye opener piece of gear that you were like, man, this is sweet. Glad I have it.
Mm-hmm. I have one of those DeLorme inReaches that you can text
Yeah.
through satellite signal, and it wasn't necessarily crucial for the hunt. I mean, it would have been. We only had one. You didn't have one.
Right.
If we'd had 2 of those though, like the first weekend when we were split up and stuff, it probably would have been much easier for me to walk back out to the truck and then you run a spare filter to you where you were hunting, and I think that would have allowed you to stay in that first spot without having to come out and this and that, or just general communication. But that was nice. I mean, it was handy to just throw a quick text out to our wives, in the evenings or whatever, just, ping home base and let everybody know everything's good, and, or get emergency messages from them if anything was going on, which thankfully didn't. But, and then it was kind of nice even during the foul weather stretch where we were kind of sitting around camp waiting it out a little bit to just whip that thing out and text back and forth with a little bit. It's not overly cost prohibitive or cost effective, I guess, to text a lot with them. They're fairly expensive, but just kind of having that peace of mind or link.
Give people
was
an
nice.
idea. I mean, you're talking. We text all season, and your bill for September is probably going to be what, $50?
Yeah, probably be less than that. Even.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Granted, the unit's like a couple hundred, right? 300.
The one that I bought has the GPS functionality,
Right.
which is worthless, just about. I mean, you can put waypoints on it, but it doesn't have really. It's
Right. There's no
map.
topo.
The map just sucks.
Right.
I mean, it'll work in a pinch if you So basically, I was carrying double units because I had a Garmin unit as well that was my primary GPS. And the inReach was in the pack in case we needed the SOS feature when we were down in a hole or whatever. But most of the time, that wasn't ever on unless we were back at camp communicating with people. But that was really the first time I had used that thing pretty heavily, and then also actively set it to listen for responses. I was actually pretty happy with, we were sending texts out, and then within 5 to 10 minutes later, we were getting the responses back. And so, like I said, it wasn't an integral part of actually hunting for us this year, but it was nice to kind of give that thing a trial run, and it's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, like you said, peace of mind for people at home. Families always want to know that you're safe. And so many areas you go into, you just don't have cell service. Or if you do, like you got to, like in my situation, if we didn't have it, I could get service, but usually it was at, a very high peak where it wouldn't be, plausible to go up there every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it just where you could.
Yeah, you didn't have to worry about going out of your way.
Yeah.
Like we found, when we were driving in one of the main roads to get to where we were hunting, there's one intersection, which is apparently like the only place you can get cell service within many miles, because every time you drive past it, there was like 4 or 5 different vehicles of dudes sitting there with their cell phones out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say if I had it to do all over again, I'd have bought the cheaper unit for $100 less without the GPS functionality, just because I don't ever use it. But I do have the model that was before the inReach were purchased or bought out by Garmin, and I haven't seen any of the new units. I'm sure now that they're owned by Garmin, they have made some improvements on that as far as the GPS functionality itself. So it may be worth it now that Garmin's running the show, but I think their prices went up a little bit too, over what DeLorme was charging.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, wait.
Siegel?
Is there anything you'd take out? Anything you carried along, and maybe you could do without?
Well, we both packed in camp shoes. You went kind of like a sneaker slipper hybrid.
It was like a northeastern kind of a New England type boat shoe, like you'd see, like maybe
a sailing shoe?
like a sailing shoe, like a Tom Brady.
Was
type.
it leather?
No, it was a Columbia type.
Oh, I know that. I know the
be
one you're
more
talking
like a
about.
sailing. Yeah, like you said, you want to be out there on your skiff,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yep.
I'd probably be wearing a lot of white, maybe a white short and cardigan with it.
Yep. And a navy
Polo?
blue belt.
A navy blue belt, and then definitely something tied around my shoulders.
Oh, man.
That was
Yeah.
the type of shoe I'd bring in there. But in all seriousness, badass shoe. Columbia makes them. I don't know. They're just like slip-on boat shoes. They're awesome.
Yeah.
What did you pack in?
I brought flip flops.
Oh, those are good, though.
Which-
That's a good choice.
Well, the
Yeah,
first 2 trips they worked great, and then
the problem is
in
they were thong. The
yeah,
toe,
they weren't
toe
like
thong.
Oh.
yeah, like between the toes,
Yeah.
which were fine when the weather was still good.
Yeah.
The temps were still high, but that last trip over when it got cold and nasty,
Yeah.
it was rough. I ended up leaving my kind of damp boots on most of the time, which sucked.
That's funny.
So
Yeah.
The first.
I would I would swap that out next time. I'd go with a little more,
All-weather shoe.
well, maybe not even necessarily that, but something enclosed, so at least you can stick your wool socks in them.
Right.
Like Crocs or something like that.
Yeah,
maybe.
something that at least keep your feet a little bit warmer.
Todd was giving me a hard time the first weekend we were over there because back at camp, first thing I did was like boots off in my slippers. He's like, he started working on me. I'm like, hey man, hey, it's like I go, Jake does not leave home without these in his pack,
Yeah.
and he's like, oh yeah, frick, hippie, whatever, and
Anyone ever like that guy?
next weekend.
Yeah,
He had his
camp
sandals.
shoes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because it was so hot,
Yeah,
and he didn't have anything other than those boots.
So there's
I was
two
like,
things.
That's right, sucker.
Like I learned, a few years back when first 2 years that when I lived in the Midwest, we go to Colorado, and you go and you try to bring all your gear and stuff like that, and A, never brought any camp shoes, and B, never brought a chair,
Mm-hmm.
a camp chair.
Yeah.
So, and 15 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of options, but now, like Nate and I both, we both packed in little the Helix. Is that what they're called?
Helinox.
Helinox.
Yeah.
Basically, just super tiny little foldable chairs. So, because there's, yeah, I mean, if you're out and you're hiking 15 miles a day and it's wet and it's nasty, there's nothing better than to come back and be able to put your shoes on, comfortable shoes, whether they're sandals or, slip-ons or whatever, and like sit down in an actual chair and like have your dinner. Because if you're in your wet boots, and you're in your wet clothes and you're trying to like sit on a nasty stump or like a blow down log or something like that, it's just after a couple days you're just like, God, I just want to sit comfortably. And so we packed those chairs in, and that was
those
it
were
makes
money.
all the difference in the world. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, especially the 8-day stretch on the last go around.
Yeah.
If we were having to, and we wouldn't have been able to do any log or anything on that last one to sit anywhere else without our chairs. We'd had to just lay in our tents the whole time. Anytime we were back at camp, because we didn't have enough room to drag a log in under our tarp.
Yeah.
Near our tents to use to sit down or anything. So.
Okay, I got a few things that are going to be high on my list. One, I made some jerky before I left. Elk jerky, phenomenal. It's just so nice to have something like other than Mountain House.
Yeah.
Even though Mountain House are great for a lot of reasons. But, man, it was nice having that big bag of jerky in there. By the end of this trip, we were kind of rationing it out because we were running low on it. But
we were running low on everything.
Yeah. But that was something. But as far as gear is concerned, I say good rain gear. Just kind of looking at what you had and what I had. Like, what you had definitely sufficed. Like, it definitely worked. But you could tell there was a difference. Like, my stuff was dry pretty much. It breathed a little bit better. And
your pants were easy on and off, too, which was nice.
Yep.
Because the first couple of days
that
it started.
didn't sound good.
Yeah. Well, it didn't, did it? But the first couple of days it was still fairly warm yet, but it was raining pretty good off and on.
Yeah.
And it would have been nice. My rain pants were, once they were on. And which kind of sucked because it wasn't quite cold enough to really, and they didn't breathe that good, so they were fine when you were sitting around, I didn't need them on all the time, but it got to be like a sauna inside those things when we were hiking around in between.
And you were on hot, so.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be upgrading those here pretty quick with ones with like knee-high zippers to be able to take them on and off with boots on.
For sure, that makes a big difference. So, one suggestion I would make to everybody that's listening, if you're going, you're going to do a western trip, if you're going to go elk hunting, mule deer hunting, anytime there's a chance of inclement weather, which can be any time, I would say with your boots, even if you got a good pair of high end waterproof boots, take the time and season those things and waterproof those things above and beyond the manufacturer, because I think back to our time in 2009 when we went to Colorado, and you had wet feet and Phil had wet feet and my dad had wet feet, and I did not have wet feet,
and I had wet feet this year,
and Nate had at
the very least you find that out before you're in a.
And we had the same boots, John. You and I had the same exact pair of boots, but I had done the waterproofing thing. Like, spray it down. You can get if you got leather boots, get the wax, get the rub on stuff, and just like 2-3 times throughout the summer, put it on, let it cook in the sun, and I'm not saying it's going to completely make it 100% waterproof, but it'll definitely knock it down big time to where you can be not thinking about your feet all the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
that's a good point.
What else were we going to talk about?
He kind of hit on the food thing, because I packed some extra weight too, just for some Mountain House alternatives. Brought brought like skinny bread in and sunflower butter and honey to make sandwiches, and that was pretty killer.
All right. So, kind of finally, as we wrap up elk season 2017, it's always fun to kind of look back and think about the things that kind of just got under your skin a little bit. Kind of like, man, whether it's, your buddy snoring or, in John's case, his flatulence, which was apparently unbearable. But a host of other things. I mean, there's so many little things. When you think about elk hunting or a western hunt, it's always these big. You think about all the great things. I'm going to hear elk bugling in the background, and it's just going to be all this epic. These days where the aspens are just going to be shimmering in the sunshine, and Will Primos is playing in the back, talking about the beauty and the breathtaking landscapes of the West, right? And everything's going to be great. We're going to have horses pack us out, and we're going to go back and it's just going to be these epic pictures that I bring home and these stories. But so many times, that's not the case, and I would say it's usually not the case. There's a lot of things that get under your skin, especially when you're hunting public lands, right? You're going to be dealing with other people. And a lot of those frustrations sometimes come with other folks that are out there, bless their hearts, doing the same thing you are.
They have every right to be
there.
there.
They absolutely do. And
their
a lot of
property
times
too.
they're entertaining. So I got a couple things that kind of got under my skin this year, and I kind of wanted to get it off my chest.
I could tell something's been bothering you since I showed up.
Yeah.
Something's like,
Well, there's a whole host of things about you that have been bothering me, but I mean,
is that the vibe?
That's probably what you're picking up on.
oh, all right.
So, we hunted in an area where it's, there's good elk population, and it's proved in the past to produce some good bulls, and they're there. They're definitely there. You just got to go in and get them. And like any good thing, I'd say the first thing that's probably kind of like got under my skin was just the, and it's the thing. These are all like double-edged swords because it's a good thing for the sport, but just the amount of information that's out there right now.
Technology.
Yeah, I mean, like secret places just aren't secrets anymore. So, we saw a lot of people in there, and our good friend Randy Newberg, he kind of hits on this a lot too about how, you don't have to be in, this tremendous cardiovascular and muscular shape to chase elk. And unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people have been focusing on one aspect of elk hunting, and that's your physical fitness. Mm-hmm. While that is definitely important, as we all know, it's not the only thing. So one thing that kind of just got under my skin this year was the fact that, I heard so many people out there that, could use a few lessons and maybe a little more practice on the bugle tube and their calling. So we had nicknamed one particular gentleman the educator.
We assume it was a gentleman, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been...
Pretty sure we actually saw him at one point.
A gal, but I think it was a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I ran into him at one point as he moved through
Professor.
the thicket at 7 knots and was blowing through the underbrush, cow calling and bugling very erratically. So
the best part of the day too, best time of the day.
Yeah, it's tough. By all means, I wouldn't consider myself a great caller, but I've learned a lot, and I think I've gotten better. Mm-hmm. And I think less is more sometimes, but. Man, I heard a lot of folks out there just, they were just ripping bugles.
Not only were they not very good at it, and you could instantly tell it's a hunter, but calling pretty excessively too.
Yeah.
like just bugle after bugle after bugle for
Okay, so
20
let's tell
minutes.
a real quick story about the gentleman we ran into. We talked to him as we drove in to the trailhead. He had stopped us and said, first of all, he had a couple of tents set up, and he kind of flagged us down, and we were driving in. And we had been driving for several 7 to 10 hours. It took forever to get over there, but we drive in, and he says. He's like, so you guys hunt here before? And we're like, yeah, we've been in here last few years. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, you looking for a place to camp? And we said, not really. He's like, well, if you go back down the main road to the next pull-out road, there's a really nice spot down there. Like, he was, like, pushing us.
Yeah,
like,
he wanted us to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and we're
obviously.
like, no, I think we're just going to keep going. And we're just gonna walk in tonight. And he's like, oh, okay. You guys are spiking in. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, cool. Well, anyway, so we run into this guy like 3 days later, right? 2 days later, 3 days later. We had hunted a morning hunt. We had come back to our spike camp, and we were just, it was super hot. We were just getting some water and stuff, making lunch.
Yeah.
And we hear this gorgeous bugle, right? Just this very typical bugle you'd probably hear on a Hollywood movie set, right? And naturally we knew it wasn't a bull. It was about 1 PM, and he had a very synthetic type of sound to his chuckle. Anyway,
And
so
stair stepped it too.
yeah, it was just
Do-do-do-do,
whatever. I mean, you do
do-do-do-do.
it long enough. You're in the elk woods long enough. You just kind of start to realize, and there's some really good callers out there that make it tough on you. But this guy, like, we're like, well, that's a guy, that's a hunter. So he ends up coming into our camp, and we exchanged some pleasantries. And he said, "Did you guys hear me calling?" And we said, "Yeah, we did. We heard you." He's like, "Oh, okay. Well, how did you know it was me? I noticed you didn't answer. You didn't call back." Well, yeah, it's because we knew it wasn't a bull.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he proceeded to say, how could you tell? And I wasn't too.
Did you start critiquing this guy?
I did. I went right into it. I said,
He
well,
was
my
asking us.
gosh.
I mean, I think he seemed like he was genuinely interested to know how we knew it was
so
a hunter.
he just wants to get better.
No, he definitely did. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
Well, oddly enough, like I had a laminated printout of things that he was doing wrong. I said, "Well, here, take this home and study
a
it."
scroll.
Yeah. But no, to Nate's point, he did want to be better, and he just, I gave him a few
Pointers.
ideas of things you may want to work on. I said, take whatever your bugle you're using and go throw it in the creek right now.
Yeah.
That's the first start, and leave this area.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't using diaphragm calls.
No.
It was a reed, a tube with a reed built into it. So there was no, it's impossible on the model he had to get
Yeah.
a smooth octave transition. So
Yeah.
I mean, it sounded as good as it was going to get for the particular tube or
Yeah.
bugle call.
I
he
get
had.
it though. I mean, I've heard of stories of people. You hear stories all the time. People calling an elk and bulls with those straws. Just real fluty stuff. And I don't think you.
Yeah, you don't have to sound perfect.
But I
we heard
understand.
actual elk answering. Bad
Yeah,
calls
I understand.
also.
Yeah, we did.
I can understand where you're coming from though.
Mhm.
So.
Well, and that brings up a good point though, because we were like, you really need a diaphragm call, and he basically said, I've tried those before, I can't get them to work, and I went through this too. It took me probably 2 full seasons of just dicking around with diaphragm calls to figure it out finally. So my suggestion, if anybody else out there is having trouble with diaphragm calls and you're just sticking with those, built-in reed rigs that are only going to sound so good, like, you just stick with the diaphragms. Keep them in your truck.
Did
when
he
you're driving
have-
back and forth to work, throw them in and just call while you're commuting. That's what I ended up doing, and it took me a long time to get to the point where I feel comfortable now bugling in the woods and actually not nervous about
Yeah,
blowing things up.
you've definitely improved a lot.
It will come eventually, so stick with it. What are you gonna say, Johnny?
Oh, I'm just trying to think of the call, like the type of call he had. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, diaphragms, I think, produce some of the most realistic bull sounds and elk sounds in general. Abe and Sons calls, which I believe Abe had the first sound resonating chamber tube ever on the market. I think he sold the Flex Tone, but actually had the sound chamber at the end.
Mm-hmm.
His calls had just like a rectangle piece of latex stretched over the top of the tube, and then it had a rubber ring to just keep it in place. So it wasn't a diaphragm call, and I think Primos did something similar later on. But
I have a Wayne Carlton.
those
an
calls,
older one that
the
was
person
like
who
that,
knows
too.
how to bugle those, it sounds really good
Yeah.
too. Along with there's a lot of good people.
You
out
can't
there.
really chuckle with those though.
He can. He
Yeah.
can. I know a couple
We
guys
were
that
in
can, and
there.
it sounds. It sounds really, really good. A guy who has been obviously put in his time, but
Yeah.
Abe put out videos, and gosh, those things sounded phenomenal. But I think I know the type of call you're talking about, and you're right. It doesn't have not a whole lot of flexibility there, but yeah, it's fun.
That was just one thing.
That was just
Yeah.
one thing. That was just one thing.
Pine squirrels are pretty annoying. A lot of days.
Strong pine squirrel population
Oh,
over
man.
at my goodness.
A guy with a 22 could kill 50 every day in some of those spots.
That's probably light, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally. So
Yeah. Which, I mean, you're going to have squirrels that make noise, but then when there's so many of them and they eventually spot you and then they get on a limb about 15 yards away, about 10 feet up in the tree, and just chirp at you for 20 minutes straight.
yeah. How about that?
Yep. Makes you want to waste an arrow on a squirrel pretty quick.
You were just so itchy to shoot something. That was funny.
Trigger.
I was.
Trigger happy.
Yeah.
You guys got anything else?
No.
I don't think so.
Well, can't wait till next year.
Totally.
Well, hey man, you got a blacktail tag.
I do.
Jake
Yep.
has a mule deer tag.
I do.
My wife still has a cow, a meat tag, basically, cow only tag
for over
that's
there.
good for a while. So
Still,
we'll get out and
yeah,
keep chasing them.
and then try to sprinkle in some there's fall chinook and steelhead and stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff to do. Also painting my house on Saturday. If you guys feel free to.
I thought you were done with that.
No. So we had a little hiccup, little roadblock in the color that week before elk season.
Ooh.
When that happened, couldn't get the correct color in the time frame I needed to get the house done. So the house
see.
is still taped up.
Looks good.
Sid hasn't seen outside for like. I mean, yeah, there's tape and paper but this weekend I'm gonna get it knocked out.
All right.
So then I can go play
Sweet.
some more.
Well, cool. So we got a few changes to the podcast. We're going to do a few in the upcoming weeks here. We're going to do some gear reviews, some new products. This is always an exciting time of year. A lot of new things coming out on the archery side of things. We're going to try to get our hands on some new fly fishing gear as well, some new tackle as it comes out, and do some reviews, put it to the test, and give you guys some completely unbiased until somebody sponsors us, then it'll become biased reviews on some gear. But as always, thanks for listening, and if you got any questions about gear that we use or Western hunting, give us, reach out, let us know. We'll help you out.
Absolutely.
One thing, finally, John, you used a different broadhead this year.
I did.
What'd you use?
Yes, I used a Helix broadhead, a single bevel design broadhead, and
Explain what a single
we'll do
bevel
a
is.
review on this. But essentially, a single bevel broadhead is it was a cut on contact broadhead. Two blade, I guess, would be the best way to describe it, but only one side of each blade is actually sharpened.
Right.
So on a typical, you think of like a razor blade or a knife, typical knife, each edge curves away from the tip.
Right.
So that'd be a double bevel. You got one on each side. This one is just a 40-degree bevel on each blade. We'll do a review on it, but yeah, it performed really nice.
Yeah. Shoots
Yep.
well.
Shoots really well.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time.
See you guys.